What are the 5 EDC items that may end up saving your life? Folks, welcome to the channel and talking again about EDC. But in this case, not about the things that, oh, I think this is super useful, or I saw this YouTube video, this guy had this, so yeah, makes perfect sense, I want to have this. No, I'm not talking about that, which is perfectly viable. If there's items that you find super useful for you, then great, incorporate them into your EDC, carry them all day long. But this is not it. In this case, I'm talking about objectively, giving the most common causes of premature death. What is it that may end up making a difference? What is it that may end up saving your life? Okay. Before I go on, remember, if you want to learn more about survival and preparedness, especially in the way I do it, in the more objective, practical manner, for this stuff regarding EDC, you have street survival skills, and for the economic aspect, you have surviving the economic collapse. You definitely want to get those two, okay? So for this, I'm using information from the CDC, and yes, I know how reliable it is or it is not, but still, there's information here that can be quite useful if we know how to analyze it, okay? So the top 10 leading causes of death in the US for ages 1 to 44. Which are those, okay? That's something that seems to be relevant to what we're trying to do. We're trying to find items that we carry with us that may end up saving our lives, giving the most common causes of death, all right? So we have number 1, by far, it is unintentional injury. Okay, that seems to be a pretty big concern. I don't want to die, so this is by far the main cause. And I understand that if you're a little bit older, then there are certain things that may change, and some of these stats may go up or down in this chart, but bear with me for a few minutes. So unintentional injury, that seems to be by far more than suicide, more than homicide, hell, even more than heart attacks. So, and yes, again, 1 to 44, probably if you are on the 44 to 60 or 70, heart attack will go up in your priority, but we'll talk about that soon enough. Now, this is not really all that quite clear. Unintentional injury, what the hell is that? And here we have an explanation of what unintentionally injury deaths in the US for ages 1 to 44 from 1981 to 2020. Which are those? Well, you're talking about mostly poisoning. See how much it has grown over the years. I mean, back in 1990, almost no one died of poisoning. Pretty much everyone was dying because of motor vehicle traffics, car accidents or getting hit by a car or something along those lines, all right? Drowning, also something to keep in mind, and other unintentional accidents, whatever that may be. Falling, drowning, falling. But man, why is it so many people started dying of poisoning? Well, because the reality is that poisoning is politically correct terms for overdose. The reality is that rather than poisoning, no, these are not mostly little kids drinking bleach. No, these are people that are dying out of overdose, right? And that has gone through the fucking roof. Look at how just in 2005, it used to be that poisoning was only a third compared to motor vehicle traffic accidents and related deaths. Now it's completely different. Now it's almost twice as much as that, if not more. Right? See how much this has grown. This just shows how messed up society is these days, right? So in terms of this, well, I mean, that's not one of my main concerns. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. Hell, I barely ever drink at all. Maybe a beer every couple weeks or so. So this is not something I'm particularly concerned. But in your case, it may well be. Maybe you have loved ones, family members that have a problem with drugs. This is something you may want to keep in mind. And maybe part of your EDC should be like Narcan or whatever the hell it is that you use for people that are suffering overdose. So just keep that in mind. This is the main cause. But then we also see that motor vehicle traffic accidents are one of the biggest causes of this number being so high, right? So we'll talk about that later. Now, moving on to the next one, suicide. And suicide is about to be taken over by homicide. They're very close now. It used to be the case that was a lot more suicide than homicide. But as you see, homicide has been going up quite a bit in recent years. It actually spiked in the last year or so. That's something of a concern, and you should definitely address that. But again, Are you someone that has, suffers depression or even has suicidal thoughts? Not my case, not my immediate family, but it may well be that in your case it is, and that's something that you want to work on. There's not going to be any magical item. Maybe the item that will be the most useful will be this, being in touch with loved ones, talking, and so on. So that's something to, just consider if that's your case or not. Homicides, of course, self-defense. Heart attacks, malignant cancers, COVID, and we have our doubts about that, given that even Fauci admitted that they even had people that died in car crashes that just because they turned out to be positive, they went into the numbers as a COVID death. So this means very little for us these days. Liver disease, diabetes, stroke, influenza, pneumonia. Yeah, typical stuff. So what is it that based on all of this, I want to have to improve my odds, given what I understand now to be some of the leading causes of deaths, right, before your time. I'm not talking about people of a certain age that you have other issues, but the things that you probably can have something to save you. Well, without any doubt, without any question, number one is a phone. For pretty much all of these, if you've had an accident, if someone is having an overdose, if someone needs immediate medical attention, if someone needs to call the cops, most of these, this will be one of your most useful, more powerful tools to have in your EDC. By far, the ability to call for help, that's gonna be your number one item. Now, advice here would be, yes, have a few numbers there ready, your 911, fire emergency, loved ones. I have an app that is very useful. It's called Life 360, I believe, and it shows family members in the map where everyone is. Since you're already being tracked, there's not a concern of privacy here, and at least in my case with my family, we like knowing where each one of us is in case something is not right, okay? And it's also practical for things like, are you coming home already? You don't even have to talk. You don't even have to call. You just see that the person is driving and you see exactly where that person is. So this is by far the most important thing you can have. Number two, given that we have an important amount of motor vehicle related accidents and deaths, and probably a lot of these homicides or people that ended up bleeding out, I would go with a very strong number two, a tourniquet. Right, you could improvise a tourniquet. Have you improvised a tourniquet recently? How well has it worked? You don't need to be bleeding to death to actually use a tourniquet, or at least try it out and see how well it works. If I apply a tourniquet to my arm and I still have a pulse, that is not working. My blood is still pumping right through my veins and arteries, so you just want to have some way of stopping that from happening. If you feel a pulse, it's not working. You can just try your tourniquet on and it works quite nicely. You have to press very tight. It even hurts a little bit. But if you just assume things, which is a very common thing for most people, especially in preparedness. Oh, I just assume that I know how to use the thing. Do you have any actual training? Oh no, but my uncle, he shoots cans very well. Well, you need proper defensive shooting training. If you don't have that, you probably want to read some of the chapters here on how to use a gun for such a purpose. But the idea that just any little thing or just a wire or a 550 paracord, you're going to be improvising tourniquets, it is a lot more difficult to improvise a proper tourniquet than most people think. And for that, tourniquets are cheap enough as they are. You can buy several, keep in different bags, keep one in your EDC bag, okay? This will be strong number two. Now, the other thing that is sometimes overlooked is when you see some of these accidents, and they may not even involve someone that is in a vehicle. Maybe you got hit by a car. Happens all day long, right? Someone that was drinking, someone that is distracted, someone that simply didn't see you. And this will depend on your lifestyle, where you are, what kind of areas you end up walking through. But if you're like in a little bit of a suburban area where there's not specific sidewalks and there's a bit of a chance that someone may hit you, something as simple as a flashlight flashlight may make a big difference. This, for me, is a clear number 3. A flashlight is one of those things that you use for signaling. If I'm walking down a road where I think that, a vehicle may not see me as clearly, and the sun is going down, I just turn my flashlight on. You can have this. One of the things I've incorporated has been some of these little lights that just get attached to your stuff, and this has a little bit of a strobe mode. So if I'm walking and I have something like this on, or a backpack, just leave the light on as I keep on walking. It's not going to do any harm, and someone that is driving can clearly see me. Typical like Stephen King case where the guy went out for a walk, got hit by a car. Stuff like that happens all the time. Not only that, if we also look into falling, one of the most common causes of death is you fall. You just trip and you fall. Why is that people trip and fall very often? Well, it's going to be ice. It's often going to be because you just didn't see clearly where you're walking. The flashlight, it is super useful, not just on these everyday practical little thingies, but in things that could be a lot more serious. Besides, if anything happens and you need to help someone, treat someone, provide some kind of medical care, defend yourself, for all of those things, you will want to have a flashlight with you. So this is essential, at least the way I see it. Let's go back to our chart here and keep going down, okay? In terms of suicide, this is something a little bit different. You will have to talk with your family. You will have to do some work on your own. Maybe you need therapy. Maybe you need to socialize more. Maybe you need to work on your emotions. Maybe, calling your loved ones more often. This is a kind of thing, someone that needs you there, someone that needs to call and talk with a friend or with a loved one because they're thinking they're having suicidal thoughts. I mean, I'm no expert in this sort of thing. Unfortunately, it's not something that I have in my family going on, but I unfortunately know of plenty of cases where these things, someone tried to reach out to someone, they couldn't, and then maybe they would do it anyway, but it's always weighing very heavily on people that just couldn't answer a call from someone, and then that person ended up making a horrible decision like that. You want to have the phone, again, strong number 1, even when looking at these. Moving to homicide, of course, self-defense. This will depend on where you are, your laws and legislations, what you can have with you or not. Of course, having a firearm, if that's an option, yeah, this is a great option. Actually, it's a super accurate firearm. It's not all that big, and yeah, works great. But it could be your Glock, could be your SIG, whatever the hell it is. But having a gun with you whenever possible, yes. Now, this is not an option because I live in damn whatever, right? Well, maybe you can have a knife. A knife can be a very useful tool for self-defense. This one, as you notice, has certain other characteristics that I've talked about before. It has a glass breaker. It has a seatbelt cutter. Why? Because I do this. This is my profession. All of these things I always keep in mind whenever I make any decision or whenever I make content for you guys. So this affects clearly some of the other aspects of keeping yourself safe, and the ability of exiting a vehicle quickly is probably even more important than going stabby with your knife. If you have to do that, this is not a bad option. It has a nice guard there for your finger. It has a decent sized blade. It will penetrate nicely. It will do the job, okay? You have something like this, you have something like this. Oh, but I'm in London. Yeah, I've been in London too. You know what? There are knives that are UK legal, which are under 3 inches and they're not locking, but they have a similar shape somewhat to this. And I've shown my Boker trace, I think it's called. You can kind of like grip it tightly, and that's a perfectly legal UK knife that could be used for self-defense, and there's not a damn thing that anyone can do about it. Even if police search you and see that you have it, that's a perfectly legal UK knife. So do your research and you will find some options. It's not always that you don't have anything left. Yeah, but these things, pepper spray, super useful in so many cases. Last resort, you have to go into something like this. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it with me. All right. Going on to some of the other things. Finally, point number 5, the 5th item in your list, which probably a lot of you don't have it. Heart disease. heart attack. Again, keep in mind the age group. We're talking about younger folks here from 1 to 44. And this is strongly influenced by all of those, under 30-year-olds that probably don't have much of a higher chance of this. But the closer you get past this point, this will skyrocket and your heart attack numbers will go up a lot. Even if you're in good health, you just never know. It could be you, it could be a friend of yours that is not taking as care of himself as well. Whatever reason, this is one of those things you definitely want to address. And there is a way to improve considerably your chances of surviving a heart attack, which is in your little first aid kit. What is that you have here? Aspirin. 200, 300 milligram aspirin. About that is usually what most information out there says. Well, one of those aspirins may end up saving your life. I think it improves your chances of survival by over 50%. Do your research, find out yourself. But I know that if I'm suffering a heart attack, the first thing I'm getting is a little aspirin and chewing on that sucker as fast as I can, because it will. I think it happened to Antonio Banderas, who he was having like a headache, and his girlfriend at the time bought him some aspirin, and it just so happened to be that she had the aspirin right there with her, and he suffered a heart attack. He took some aspirin, and doctors told him that that was definitely what saved his life and what definitely made that heart attack to not be as serious or leaving as serious consequences as it could have. So aspirin, really, how many of you have aspirin in your EDC? It costs nothing at all, cents. It weighs nothing. You just throw it there in your pocket, and yet most people don't have aspirin in your EDC. Yeah, sure, have some plasters, some Band-Aids, a little bit of disinfectant here and there. That's all fantastic. It makes perfect sense. This is the difference between the stuff that may end up saving your life and the stuff that is simply convenient to have in your EDC. Convenient is great, but all of these things fit in a fanny pack, in a little satchel, and it may end up making a big difference. Bonus point number 6, I always want to have a multi-tool. I've used it in so many cases that, even when having car problems, so going back here to, motor vehicle traffic incidents, fixing my car, I've done it before with my multi-tool. It's not always the case, but cutting something and just using something that I could get around with my multi-tool is something that I definitely want to have with me. Something as simple as your FFP2 respirator, not just any piece of surgical mask that is completely useless, no, but something that is for that. It's going to be rated to filter 95% of the particles in the air. You're looking at something that can be useful in case of smoke, of fires, of falling structures, debris, anything that is compromising the air. And there's a number of even more horrible things that could be happening. Anything that makes breathing air a little bit more difficult, something like this, which weighs nothing at all. A lot of you people already have it because of the pandemic. Hopefully you have FFP2s and not just the crap that has no rating whatsoever. No, FFP2, FFP3, 95 or 99% of the particles, that's what you want to have. Weighs nothing, super cheap, and it may end up making a big difference if air is compromised by whatever reason. Folks, that is the list. These are the things you want to keep in mind. Probably there's a thing or two here that you want to give a little bit more thought. Folks, it's going to be all for now. See you in the next video. Take care.